So I would like to start with a short introduction why I started this channel, because you could be asking, who cares really about the business ethics? It's now being used and referred to all the time, everywhere, and to the point of like it doesn't make any difference anymore. Maybe that's the reason I wanted to go back to the whole origin of business ethics, especially when its application to the business environment, because I know it has been cheapened and overused because every second, every third executive may have in his or her title the word business ethics attached to it. Since it's been relabeled to integrity, to sort of like dignify it more, and maybe add more value to the whole concept of business ethics, well, it's actually just did the opposite. It sort of cheapened it even more. So I would like to salvage what's left of the business ethics from the perspective of how business executives look at it and where it fits in their agenda, because over time it actually, the whole concept of business ethics evolved to be more of a echo chamber where people lament different things, they prescribe certain basic truths, like Captain Obvious of that sort, although it gets very little traction with the people who should be listening, who should be embracing those hard truths, coming from the world of business ethics. But these people, they sit quite high up. I mean, for business executives, it's just noise, white noise down there. It does have, some relevance just because of regulators, Department of Justice, SEC, SFO, you name it, lots of organizations out there who keep chanting on and on. That's the same mantra about tone at the top, that now it's been relabeled to conduct at the top. Then the World Economic Forum, they're chanting this thing about how business leaders need to show moral leadership. Then Edelman Trust Barometer rates the need for business ethics and the organizational justice that employees are ready to forego a chunk of their pay, but just to see some of it shown to them by the business leaders. So there's a lot of that chat incessantly going on and on and on. So, but let's look at this, not with a jaded eye, because we are all tired of this. It has been part of this agenda. Why is that, that I'm actually trying to bring some hard truths and actually speak my mind when it comes to business ethics? Well, let's start with the first point. Business ethics has also certainly evolved to be somewhat of a fake thing, just like, media that used to be part of the guarantee for democracy in countries now has evolved to be fake media, that's actually pushing for the different ideological agenda, with the whole point of like brainwashing people. Same thing with business ethics. It all started on the premise that, we should get that important conversation right up to the level of business executives, where they should listen and learn how to be humble and embrace those hard truths coming from, from below, so that they can steer the ship, forward, not through even through the uncharted waters, but at the same time with a bit of dignity that's sort of a spread and shared, within the organization. But at the same time, it's not happening. So let's look at some very basic elements, why it's not happening, just to understand what the heck is going on here. Well, first off, people who make it up there just to become, the dwellers of the C-suite, those business executives, of course they got there not just because of their merits, being enlightened and spiritual and humble, people that also happen to have some business acumen, and that's what got them there in the first place. Quite the opposite. They got there because they learned how to be ruthless, they learn how to manipulate people, they learn how to stay above the human component, where you're talking about empathy, that business leaders need to demonstrate that empathy. Well, that's the first thing that would probably cut them on their knees if they tried to get to the level of where they are now. So That's the first disconnect. They got there, and there's no way you're going to like really tell them like, okay, now you made it there. Now you have to learn to be humble. It reminds me like, President Putin was talking, and the same kind of a perception was shared. Hey, let's let these people who got to power get rich, steal, and then by the time they got really, filthy rich, they will, become woke and awakened. Okay, now we'll stop doing that. We'll stop stuffing, lining our pockets with money, and we'll actually make a difference. Well, far from it. Why is that happening? Point number 2. Well, we all know what power and money does to the brain. Not only it messes up, the brain chemistry, but it also does it in such a way that even people who lose their status, who lose their money, who lose their power, it's going to take them a decade to rewire their brain to the original state of, of being like a poor guy with some unhealthy ambitions who learned it the hard way, and he's just trying to stay sane once he kind of tripped and lost his footing and now ended up being a poor guy. Point number 3. When everybody talks about business ethics and how, business leaders should listen to the ones telling them and reminding them about, business ethics, well, that's another disconnect. Why should the leaders, who've got the power, listen to some loser, to preach and pontificate before those guys with power about the merits of business ethics? Unlikely. But you may say, well, what about those people that sort of like were there, and then they, they sort of like tripped, something happened, they went down, the hill, came back up again, and as their former peer, they really want to talk about it. Well, that's another thing. Well, somebody, who did it with a style like Richard, Be Strong, he was vice president of a big company. And then, he spent some time in jail, he came back, and I actually admire the fact that he came back and he really made a difference. But I don't think that other business leaders would really like and feel comfortable listening to Richard, sharing his experience with them, even though Richard's experience is very relevant to where those business guys are now, because they're completely oblivious of what's going on, what can happen to them. That's very easy. That money they made and the status they have is a no guarantee that they can go down. So, well, even people like Madoff, think about it, right? It just could be a very simple happenstance, like a mishap that could trigger the fall from grace very quickly. So the point number 3, when you've got somebody, a messenger, talking to the king about what went wrong in his kingdom, unlikely to get any traction. So point number 4, well, some of those leaders, they realized that they really lost the connection, with reality, and they would like to regain that. And also they would like to sort of like shrug off the fact that their brain's been hijacked by that, desire for power and the level of comfort of being part of the elite, part of the club. So they try to kind of unsettle their brain a bit, and administer a bit of a reset to them. Oh, that's how some of those CEOs, they turn into adrenaline junkies when they try to rattle their system, give it a nice push so that they stay a bit more realistic about what's going on around them, just not to get carried away with their status and money. But unfortunately, it doesn't really help, liberate their brain, liberate their mind, to become again observant of what's going on and pay attention to what they really need to do. So those CEO activists or those enlightened CEOs who meditate a lot, well, it's a step in the right direction. Would it really leave, or would it probably, help somehow change their settings, rejig something within so they can actually realize that, okay, well, I'm getting there, Maybe I'm halfway there, but I'm doing something about it. So number 5, well, okay, some CEOs, they would try to be like CEO activists, do a bit of like a social relevant jig or something, they would do like as a part of their PR or GR, and they would get out there and they would say the right stuff. But most of those attempts basically turned out a flop, just because there's always something stupid they say that's really out of place. So therefore, it's a very treacherous ground. So point number 6, well, with the CEOs, with the C-suite, dwellers, CFOs, CEOs, and what have you, well, definitely there's one element that helps them stay lean and mean at the same time, because they know that the market forces, and with all the COVID pandemic, the shelf life of CEOs and people in top positions, has gone down to just not years anymore, not decades, of course. It could be just a matter of months. So this is a nagging thought at the back of their mind that reminds them, that they actually are not there for a long haul. They cannot relax. So they really are in a state that just have to be, lean and mean to be able to deliver what's needed, collect their pay, stay relevant, and if they have to file out, they should live it with grace and keep their reputation. Well, this is the important component that helps them grounded in this reality. But that's, again, it's just the market forces, nothing from within the company or external pressure. And finally, when we're talking about an expanded version of this reality with the climate agenda, with the carbon footprint, that business leaders, they have to be like saviors of the planet and very much mindful of what they do, how they say things, what they do, before the public, and how they are construed and perceived and respected and treated by the public. Well, that's another component that makes their jobs totally unbearable. The whole concept, for business leaders to be role models is important, yes, because, we're living in a world right now totally messed up by the COVID pandemic. We cannot trust politicians anymore. We cannot trust doctors anymore. We can't trust, anybody from the expert pool or anybody who gets on television. The only people we can trust are the people who, keep this world go around. That's the people who give jobs, retain people, employ people, sustain their businesses, look for new markets in this very, very daring environment. Yes, we can look up to them. Expect them to be like Nelson Mandela or Mother Teresa. We all know that basically in the end, the truth comes out about them being not that saintly. So the whole point of my channel is to look at all these elements and see what could be done about it. And lastly, offer my solution. It's not even a hard pill. It's not even like a blue or red pill. It's something that I have come across and thought through over, more than a quarter of a century of having spent next to the CEOs and C-suite of big companies. That's what I learned from them. So I will be coming to the concept of the business ethics from the angle of our business executives to see where the fit can be found and how that gap can be filled and bridged. And basically, I will try to share my insights with you to help you also make some conclusions and learn a few things you can use in your own activities. So stay tuned.